Namaste, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's guest talk. The title today is Usefulness of Meditation for Employee Wellbeing. The guest speaker with us today is Dr. Ashok Ashta, who is Professor of Global Business at the University of Kitakyushu, Japan. Previously, he had over 3 decades of international business experience at Japanese world-class manufacturing companies, serving at the director and CEO levels. His current research interest has branched towards understanding the experience of meditation in global work contexts. Dr. Ashta's family has been affiliated with the Mothers International School since the 1960s, first as students and recently teaching. When he visits India, he often attends the evening satsang meditation session at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. We welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to an interesting session with you. Over to you, sir. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Unmute, share screen, share, then make it big, reduce to this. Are we ready?
Sir, perfect.
Okay. So thank you, Arunima, for this introduction, and Dr. Bijlani for this platform to talk about my research on the usefulness of meditation for employee well-being. First, let me explain where I'm coming from literally. Japan is an island country of over 10,000 islands. Of these, over 200 are inhabited, but the 4 main islands are Hokkaido in the north, Honshu, where Tokyo is, then there is Shikoku hidden here, and then the westernmost island of Kyushu. And Kitakyushu is at the north of Kyushu Island, and my university is the University of Kitakyushu, and they funded my current research. So many thanks to the University of Kitakyushu also. At the University of Kitakyushu, I'm a professor of global business. Therefore, my interest and motivation in studying about meditation comes from a business and management angle. Modern textbooks talk about the usefulness of meditation for employee well-being, and I wonder how. Here, employee well-being refers to the overall quality of an employee's experience and functioning at work. And meditation, just to define the term, meditation derives from the Latin meditatio, to think over, to consider, and is used as a comparative category to designate seated techniques that facilitate transformations of consciousness. Traditionally speaking, meditation has been considered as a part of yoga. But these days, especially in the West, but also in Japan, under the influence of English in many parts of the world, when we say yoga, people tend to think about what scholars call modern postural yoga. But past generations' version of yoga focused much more on the techniques for seated meditation. At the outset, I should share the commonly received wisdom about yoga and meditation that 1 gram of practice is worth more than tons of theory, and that time itself is one of the ingredients of that effort. So you cannot hurry results. I repeat, one has to practice and spend time practicing. There is a growing awareness of the usefulness of meditation for employee well-being. For example, meditation can be useful for advancing ethical behaviors at work. Another example, meditation can combat workaholism through relaxation and facilitating an understanding of how external factors, such as the work environment, can control the employee. And a third example here, the practice of meditation can influence happiness at work. Thus, such past research shows that meditation is useful for the human end of the business, and therefore for creating a human-centric society, such as Society 5.0. So if all this is already known, why research more? Well, existing research tends to be quantitative. And this is problematic within the meditation context because at the individual practitioner level, the efforts and the effects are sensed rather than mathematically graded in some quantitative way. Meditation can be read to be useful, but beyond that notional level, how do outcomes manifest at the workplace level? In other words, practitioner accounts of the fruits of the meditation effort for business and management are still limited. And as a result, we miss out on strengthening the compulsion for meditation in the modern working world. The other point is the urgency, which derives from the sustainability imperative. In 2015, 193 nations agreed to adopt the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, such as eradicating poverty, addressing climate change, and so on. The 17 colors shown here relate to the 17 goals referred to as the SDGs. UN SDG 8 calls for decent work, a term that includes a call for safe working environments, that is, to promote a de-stressed employee well-being. UN SDG 17 calls for partnerships, including international partnerships, and international work interactions can be experienced as stressful because of conflicting values, and I will provide an example later. Therefore, meditation can be the stress alleviator, not the only possible solution, but certainly one useful solution. So here I explain the limited purpose of my current research. My idea is to present lived experience accounts of meditators to shed light on benefits in their current everyday work life, which is more relevant to the modern business world, less concerned by aims of salvation. Thus, the idea behind my research is to help others, employees and their leaders, understand one way, and not necessarily the only way, but one way of enhancing the human element of the business equation. My presentation today will have 6 sections over the next 27 slides, and it will cover 1, what previous research says, the methodology of my current research, the findings, implications, looking to the future, and then the conclusion. For the listeners, I recommend 2 things. First, look for points that you feel could be relevant to you in your lives. And second, note down points that you want clarification on. There will be time, I anticipate about 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for an open discussion. Existing research links meditation to employee well-being. First, individual stress reduction contributes to well-being. Meditation leads to less perceived stress and burnout by employees, and thus leads to their well-being. Next, we have research conducted in the UK that shows that meditation practice, even using a modern-day smartphone application, an app, could be useful for managing stress reduction. And we also have research conducted in Australia that shows that meditation can be an effective, efficient, and low-cost inclusion within an organization's health promotion repertoire to help improve mental health among staff. Thus, a scholarly understanding of meditation experiences has the potential to provide fresh insights into managing employee well-being. Existing research is useful. We begin to understand meditation is useful, but the idea remains fuzzy. We miss out on the concrete. It seems theoretical. Nothing wrong with theory, but scholars increasingly call for greater attention to reporting lived experiences to make research human-centric as opposed to theory-centric. When I was growing up, I thought there was one way to do meditation. But I now realize that there are many different ways it is practiced. For example, a recent research on what meditators do when they meditate reports, and this is highlighted in yellow, we compiled a collection of 309 meditation techniques through a literature search and interviews with 20 expert meditators. Then we reduced this collection to 50 basic meditation techniques. I repeat, 50 basic meditation techniques. Examples include scanning the body, 2, observing how body sensations arise without adhering to them, singing mantras, and so on. These researchers classify these 50 techniques into Hindu, Buddhist, and common techniques. So meditation techniques can be thought of as predominantly Vedic Buddhist in origin, while nevertheless acknowledging contemplative practices in other religions such as Christianity. The Routledge Handbook on Yoga and Meditation Studies explains the practice of contemplation across faiths: Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Jain, Judaism, and Sikhism. Going back to an original definition, Patanjali is said to have put in written form the Yoga Sutras, where sutra means thread in a very basic form, concise explanations. These are the original instructions of yoga. The first sutra reads, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. This is the beginning of instructions in yoga. The next sutra defines Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the control of thought waves in the mind. And then later in chapter 2, we have Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhayo, Ashta Vangani. Translates to, the 8 limbs of yoga are Yam, Niyam, Asana, which is the posture, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. This explanation in Japanese is provided by yoga instructor Midori. She is Japanese, but she did her teacher training in the Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. She shows the 8 limbs, Ashtanga, in this pyramid form, starting with Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. In the English-speaking world, a new terminology called mindfulness has emerged in recent decades. Mindfulness is defined in basic terms as present-centered awareness. Not the past, not the future, just the present. Kabat-Zinn, who is originally from MIT and now at the University of Massachusetts, says it is a way of being in the moment and being non-judgmental. What does that mean? So, for example, if air is striking your face, you are aware that air is striking your face, but you do not pass judgments such as this is good, this is bad. You're just aware of the present moment. And Kabat-Zinn uses the term mindful meditation. There is a famous Harvard study reported in the leading journal Science, which asserts that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. In the opening paragraph over here, it sets up their research question, and I read, many philosophical and religious traditions teach that happiness is to be found by living in the moment, and practitioners are trained to resist mind wandering and to be here now. These traditions suggest that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Are they right? That is the research question. The study concludes over here, and I read, in conclusion, a human mind is a wandering mind, and a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. The ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost, they explain, they conclude. The emotional cost of unhappiness when the mind wanders. With this growth in scholarly research on mindfulness and meditation, a review was conducted by a bunch of researchers led by Good. In their review, mindfulness influences attention with impacts on the workplace in terms of performance, relationships, and well-being. In their research paper, Good and others recognize the Buddhist tradition's emphasis on such mindfulness training for centuries. Thus, we can understand that Vedic Buddhist meditation techniques are useful for business and management practice because the reduced stress contributes to a safer work environment as envisioned in UN SDG 8, which pertains to decent work. Given the urgency of the UN SDGs, this research too becomes urgent in that regard. Thus, we can see indigenous knowledge on meditation from circa 6th century BC evolving to mindfulness in the 20th century. It is recognized for workplace stress reduction in management studies of the 21st century and could be a useful contributor towards achieving the UN SDGs targeted for 2030. But the question remains, how are these betterments of performance, relationships, and well-being experienced in the workplace? To support my research, I had a rallying environment. My own general interest, spurred by the organization behavior textbook and the stressful COVID environment. Second, the initial resumption of my own practice of meditation and those autoethnographical experiences. Third, Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch and Dr. Bijlani's encouragement. The University of Kitakyushu's interest in UN SDGs, and approval of special research funding by the University of Kitakyushu. In concrete terms, In addition to providing me this platform, Dr. Bijlani started me off on the journey with 3 books that he presented, with best wishes and prayers for rapid strides on the spiritual path, he wrote. I share here 3 important nuggets. There are many in these books, but I share here 3 important nuggets. First, meditation is the art of deconditioning your mind so that it gets access to almost infinite energy and unlimited wisdom, leading to true and lasting happiness. Second, that happiness is independent of external circumstances. And third, time. Time itself is one of the ingredients of the effort. And in turn, I forward those received wishes. May all beings share in my peace and happiness. The methodology I followed was qualitative research. I conducted interviews with meditators to understand their experiences in their work life. The meditators' narratives, the data from my research, were interpreted, informed also by my own subjective autoethnographic experience. Just to explain the research term autoethnography, auto refers to personal experience. Ethno refers to practices of a group. In the current research, the meditators. And graphy is the interpretation and representation, how it graphs out. As part of my research, I personally observed diverse meditation techniques practiced by visiting several centers in Japan, Singapore, and India. Let me explain 7 points of my autoethnographical subjectivity. I have been in business management practice for over 3 decades, as was introduced. I have spent long years in a Vedic Buddhist environment. I mean, the time I spent in India and Japan. I first learned meditation at approximately the age of 10. I attended a 10-day Vipassana course, a Buddhist origin technique, in late 2021. Regular practice, usually morning at 4 a.m. and evening after work, led me to experience firsthand the usefulness of meditation for my own work life too. And I repeat, usefulness can be fully understood only through personal experience. However, having been educated in the West, and my PhD in international management is from the United Kingdom, I also understand the challenges faced by management practitioners who need scientific evidence to promote resource allocation for meditation. Personally, I experienced a variety of meditation practices, visiting centers in Japan, India, and Singapore. This photo shows me at the gate of the Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. In the many centers, I observed different techniques. Even in Japan, 3 different centers teach 3 different techniques, and there could be many others. For example, one technique is concentrating on the breath and ensuring equal time of intake, 5 seconds inhale, 5 seconds exhale. In another technique, with eyes closed, just be aware of the breath coming in and the breath going out. No need to worry about how long or short it is. In another technique that I learned and studied at Mount Koya, also called Koyasan in Japanese, there is a Shingon Buddhism technique called Ajikan. They gaze at the Hindi Sanskrit letter A, shown here, and read it out like a mantra. My research is not about good or bad techniques, or even to evaluate them in any other way, but just to be aware that different meditators mean different things regarding what they practice when they say they do meditation. Thus, I am a practitioner researcher along 2 axes. A practitioner from business and researcher in that domain, and 2, a practitioner of meditation and a researcher in that domain. Such a dual positioning shapes the subjectivity of the current research and the discussion presented in the following sections. Understand that business has 2 major dimensions. The first is profit. Again, it could be big or small profit, but without saying good or bad, some profit is necessary to continue. But the second aspect, the people dimension of the business. As I mentioned, globalization causes people of different values, different cultures to come together. Consider Thai executives in a Japanese company in Tokyo. Thai executives want a healthy work environment versus Japanese people who stress on long-term employment. This leads to stress among Thai workers. Why can't Japanese people consider healthy work styles? Among Japanese workers, why can't Thai people understand that a stable long-term employment is a safer environment? Stress. It results in stress on both sides in this globalized work situation. And meditation can alleviate that stress. I am guided by my own autoethnographic experience. And second, previous research by Good and others that I showed previously indicated 3 key outcomes: performance, relationships, and well-being. These outcomes of previous research provide me the analytical framework of my own research. In the slides, the data is presented with changed names to preserve anonymity of the respondents. First, consider Naomi's workplace experience, shown in yellow. When I started working in sales consulting as a new graduate, I had a turning point in my life. I was suddenly put in charge of dealing with overseas customers because I graduated from the Faculty of International Management. However, the thing was, I couldn't speak English at all at that point, although I was somewhat proficient in English for exams. The result was a disaster. The result was a disaster points to an abject performance, the result. Speaking in English, and since language is about communicating in the context of relationship, it lends to an interpretation that the abject performance was due to impaired relationships. And suddenly put in charge statement has a ring of not being ready, a psychological state related to well-being. Analyze along these 3 factors, performance, relationships, and well-being, the tone of the experience connotes a stressful situation. Naomi seems to be suffering, and note also in this case, it relates to globalized work. This brings up an integrated conceptual framework. I bring de-stressed situation in the middle. Note the 2-way arrows to performance and relationships. De-stressing improves relationships, and improved relationships improve de-stressing. Similarly, de-stressing improves performance, and improved performance improves de-stressing. And de-stressing contributes to improved well-being. Note, there can be other ways of examining the data, and that can be based on other subjectivities. I accept this, but this is one subjectivity and one plausible understanding. Next, consider data of Rajiv's work experience in India. I am an independent service provider for big international companies such as Toyota and IBM. I started regular meditation over 30 years ago. Prior to that, I led a life of smoking and drinking. However, meditation has helped a lot. I'm much more introspective, and has resulted in an amazing experience in my business life. For example, in the service industry, it is quite common for the service provider to entertain clients to lubricate the wheels for more orders. But in my case, clients take me out rather than me taking them out for lunch or dinner. One notices that Rajiv's business performance is doing well. His clients take him out. Rajiv recalls his smoking and drinking of even 30 years ago, suggesting that was a stressful part of his life. And the switch to meditation practice has helped de-stress to that extent. Now, many in the world quit smoking and drinking without taking up meditation. But this current research is not about causality, but rather to understand the lived experience of meditators. Meditation leads to de-stressing and improved performance. Improved performance is a two-way arrow. The resulting de-stress also leads to growth in terms of job satisfaction. Clients take me out, which Good and others in the previous research align with well-being. Next, consider Fiona's work experience in Singapore. I was working in international banking for several years. I could feel it was a stressful environment. I had to work long hours, but the money was good. On the other hand, we were always chasing performance targets. I almost gave up my job. I was originally a Christian, but now I practice Buddhist meditation. This has helped me manage my relations at work better. Meditation has helped me continue my work. The respondent attributes her improved workplace relationships to meditation practice, and the words help me point to an appreciative state of mind, a de-stressed state. Meditation served as a two-way process. It helped improve relations, and then the resulting de-stress helped improve well-being because of the resilience to continue work. Data 3, Toshi's experience in Japan. I am an accounting specialist. The regular meditation is very useful not only in my mind, but also in my life work, including business and investment. Especially when I decide to buy and sell in the market, it has strongly powerful influence in my mind, such as patience and discipline, both in bull and bear market. Toshi attributes meditation to enhanced experience of patience and discipline, a de-stressed being. The words very useful in my work are evocative of positive emotions and indicative of employee well-being. Similar experiences abound. Consider my own experience. Meditation trains me to accept all outcomes. As a result, I am no longer afraid of failing, and even simple requests to colleagues such as, "Can I have a receipt for that donation?" are now possible. What was experienced as stressful previously is no longer stressful. But for many, asking for a receipt should not be stressful in the first place. But that is exactly the point. Perception is personal. Each experience is personal, and therefore practice and experience will also be personal. As I explained, this research had a limited purpose, and it hopefully accomplishes 2 points. One, this exploratory research illustrates how the practice of meditation de-stresses employees, resulting in improved workplace outcomes in terms of performance, relationships, and well-being. We saw the examples of Rajiv, Fiona, and Toshi from India, Singapore, and Japan, all in Asia. The illustrative experiences of this data bring previous theory to life in this paper's integrated setting, as shown in this conceptual diagram. So what are the implications? Previous research linked meditation to reducing stress among students. This study joins and extends that conversation by shedding light on the usefulness of meditation to workplace situations. We see lived experience accounts from different parts of Asia in an integrated manner. Previous research presented the trilogy of performance, relationships, and well-being as disjointed. We had three different boxes. The current exploratory research presents an inter-impacting, integrated framework. By sharing lived experience data, the current research strengthens the notion that our spiritual values need not be forgotten when entering the workplace. Getting back to meditation and the implications for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs. Naomi's lived experience showed globalization has increased stress in the workplace in terms of performance, relationship, and well-being. Through this research, we can now understand that not only stress, but also performance and relationships loop back to impact employee well-being. 193 nations have jointly called for achieving decent work conditions, which include safe environments, including mental health. SDG 17 calls for international partnerships, and we saw that the international situation can excite stressful situations. The developed conceptual integrated model presented reinforces the notion that meditation can be a useful practice as a coping strategy to build a sustainable world. This research links meditation directly to realizing the UN SDGs. Research is not complete. I bring up 3 points for future research. First, the ethnographic approach implies necessarily that the researchers and the respondent's subjectivity is involved. Therefore, we need further ethnographic studies to develop other accounts of meditators' experiences in their workplace. Second, scientific investigation supports the notion that different meditation styles and traditions are characterized by different patterns of neural activation, different changes in the brain, depending on the meditation style and tradition. So future research can delve deeper on whether certain meditation techniques, such as observing breath versus mantra meditation, has different influences on different aspects of workplace experience. Third, the current research was conducted in Asia only. I feel we need to widen research to lived experience of meditators in Europe and America and other continents. The current research provides the rationale to spur such further deeper and broader study. Conclusion. In conclusion, meditation impacts workplace performance, relationships, and well-being in an integrated way through de-stressing. Business and management scholars and practitioners may give more attention to meditation, which is crucially important to leading unified spiritual and work lives. In turn, management education institutes should incorporate practical training on meditation in the formal education curriculum. We need not separate the spiritual and work, a notion especially predominant in the West. Society must recognize the usefulness of the spiritual, specifically meditation, for a holistic approach to achieving business and management objectives, including decent work as decided by 193 nations. Programs for encouraging meditation practice, such as the education curriculum of management courses, or even youth groups and community centers, are important to prepare humans for contemporary challenges. Overcoming inhibitions regarding spiritually related meditation can help realizing the UN SDGs, and the current research on meditation raises hope in terms of realizing UN SDG 8 on decent work. Finally, I want to mention about spreading meditation's benefits, starting with Asia. Already there is a practical connection of India with Kitakyushu in the context of UN SDGs. I mentioned in my previous slide the importance of incorporating meditation in our management education curriculum. In this context, yoga instructor Midori, who trained at the Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch, visited my global business classroom. Oops. She visited my global business classroom and talked about the usefulness of meditation to my students. Her lecture was much longer than mine today and included a demonstration. Midori's lecture was appreciated by the students, and many students told me how they felt they benefited from learning about stress reduction through meditation. So, in a sense, we see international partnership in play here, SDG 17 in action. To listeners who come to Kitakyushu, I hope you will find time to visit our beautiful campus. Finally, my many, many thanks to Dr. Bijlani, Arunimaji, the Yoga Education and Spirituality Yes platform, the Aurobindo Ashram, and the Mothers International School. I am ready for discussion. Arunima, please lead the way.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot for sharing your comprehensive and insightful research with all of us. We are really honored to attend this session with you. Thank you so much. Uh, Participants, if anyone has a question, anyone wants to share something, please go ahead. You can put your question in the chat box, or you can raise the hand, unmute yourself. Ashok sir, you can stop sharing the screen either. We had some feedback during the presentation. Wonderful presentation. Congratulations to Dr. Ashta. Any queries, participants? Please go ahead.
Good presentation, Ashok.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
A very good evening from India here to all of you. I have still just a suggestion or a question. And this meditation is an integral part in managing work-life balance. Is it a part of curriculum somewhere in Japan or India or an institution so that we can start this meditation as a part of curriculum since the childhood, and so that the students and the adults, they get this training since the childhood and they adopt it throughout their life. In this way, they can enhance their physical power, peace, and away from disease also. This is my just suggestion or a question.
Thank you very much for this suggestion. And I have taken, as I explained in my last slide, one first step, bringing in yoga instructor Midori to my classroom and a global business classroom. And I hope we can make this more formal. I did my MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. And there too, we had, and in those days already, a management center for human values. So they already from a long time ago, at least at the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, there was an awareness that we need to stress on human values. In those days, when we were younger, most students, and I share this, stayed away from such centers. They were more interested in the finance courses, making money, the profit aspect of business that I talked about, rather than the people aspect. But that is my awareness. I'm not aware of formal curriculum within Japan, and maybe some other participants can add regarding that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so someone has had raised the hand. The display name is Zoom user. If you still have the question, please go ahead. Earlier, someone had raised the hand.
Yes, hi. My name is Natalia. Thank you, Ashok, for this really useful presentation. I just want to really ask the practical question. It was mentioned that you are doing meditation at 4 a.m. Could you just share what time do you go to bed to be able to do meditation at 4?
Okay, I was sharing this. The answer is I'm 9 o'clock. I would usually be in bed, sometimes as early as 8 or 8:30. So I go to bed early and I wake up early.
I see. Good. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Sir, we have a question in the chat box. Sri Vidya says, thank you very much for sharing. Could you share any experiences you may have had in training business managers on meditation and spirituality in the corporates?
I have, sorry, thank you for this question. I do not have experience of training. I'm not an instructor of meditation. So and that is the reason why I brought in yoga instructor Midori to come to my classroom and talk about meditation and teach and have students experience. I practice, but I'm not a teacher.
Thank you, sir. Someone from Plato Public Senior Secondary School. This is the username. You had raised the hand. Please go ahead if you still have the question. Okay, so I don't think they are responding. Midori, you had raised the hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank a lot to Dr. Ashok, and thank you very much for introducing me to. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and also Dr. Vishwarani, because so thanks to Mr. and Mrs. Ashta, so I could go to India and I could learn yoga from Dr. Vijurani. And that's why I could visit a beautiful university where Dr. Ashok is working for, and I could meet a beautiful students there. So I thought that yoga and meditation connected me to them and connected to everything. And so that makes me feel so grateful. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for all the opportunities. And then, so that's my word. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I just want to say two things. Yoga is for physical health and meditation is for mental health, and both go hand in hand in every sphere of life.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Dr. Bijlani, I request you to share your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Arunima. Thank you, Dr. Ashok Ashta, for a scholarly talk on the subject. Meditation is something, as you said, more than 2000 years ago, this technique was discovered or maybe stumbled upon by the mystics who felt the need for intense concentration to find answers to the deeper truths of existence. And they found that certain methods helped them in that intense concentration. And that's how they probably stumbled upon these meditative techniques, which were then gradually formalized. Now, something that is that old and still continues to survive, not only in the places like India, where most of them originated, but all over the world, has already received the testimony of or the support of both time and the world. And as Sri Aurobindo said that anything which has been appreciated by both, which has received a favorable verdict, a favorable joint verdict from both time and the world, is generally true, good, valid, and worthwhile. And therefore, actually, much research should not be necessary to prove the validity and the utility of meditative techniques. But at the same time, in the current atmosphere where we live in an era of science, unless we are able to demonstrate the efficacy of some of these things through formal research, not many are willing to accept, particularly those who have been under the influence of the Western civilization over the last 200 years or so, where science and rationality has ruled the thinking. They find it very difficult to accept these things which have stood the test of both time and scrutiny by much of the world. That is not enough for them. And that's why this type of studies which you presented have great value. Your study, as well as the several other studies from all over the world that you cited. And therefore, this was an extremely valuable talk to further increase the awareness about these techniques and their utility. And since we also live in a utilitarian utilitarian era apart from the era of science, if something is shown to be useful in concrete terms, like affecting performance, relationships, and well-being, then it is more likely to be accepted than if we just say that, well, this is something which helps you discover yourself and arrive at the deeper truths of existence, which seems somewhat airy-fairy. So somewhat more concrete outcomes are also always very appealing. You talked about thousands of techniques of meditation. And while there is a bewildering variety of meditative techniques, which is understandable, because I said, different mystics have stumbled upon different techniques, and then while formalizing them, people have added their own individuality. One can go to the extent of saying that there are as many meditative techniques as the number of people who meditate, because eventually everyone evolves his own way of meditating. But at the same time, some sort of a synthesis is also necessary. And I just mentioned two attempts at this type of a synthesis. One was made by Herbert Benson, who went on to establish at the Harvard Medical School the Body Mind Institute. Herbert Benson worked on meditation with Maharshi Mahesh Yogi. That was his starting point. And then he went into meditative techniques, not only the one which Maharshi Mahesh Yogi taught the world, that is transcendental meditation, but Herbert Benson went into other techniques of meditation, also several other techniques, and came to the conclusion that all of them have four things in common. One is that they all need a relatively quiet and peaceful atmosphere. Secondly, the person has to be in a comfortable position. Thirdly, we need a mental device for stabilizing the mind. And fourth is a passive attitude. That is, do not struggle with the thoughts and other obstacles which might disturb the person. A passive attitude. These are the four things in common. Another way in which one can synthesize the various meditative techniques is that they broadly fall into two categories. One is the concentration type of meditative techniques, and the other is the mindfulness type. And then interestingly, what you find is that Patanjali's system, which you mentioned, which can be easily deduced from his Yoga Sutras, has elements of both concentration and mindfulness. So in a way, we can say one of the oldest is also one of the most comprehensive techniques of meditation, and one can pick and choose what suits the person best. If you're more inclined to concentrate, you can use that. If you're more inclined to mindfulness, you can pick up that. And if you want to combine both, as Patanjali has done, you can combine both. If you look at it, the initial part is achieving the right atmosphere and the frame of mind, and then dharana is concentration. But then as you move from dharana to dhyana, dhyana is mindfulness. So you have both concentration and mindfulness, and a preparatory phase through, of course, living a good morally upright life, yama and niyama, and then focus on the breathing, pranayama, and then try to create a vacuum in the mind by trying to sort of have some sort of a control on the sensations that might arise from the body or the mind, that is pratyahara, withdrawal sort of from all these things. But then, since the mind can't stay in a vacuum, you concentrate on something, that is dharana. And then, if you like, you can let the mind drift, but then drift in, meditate on the theme of concentration itself. So that is mindfulness. So you can see that you have elements of both in one of the oldest techniques. And then if one moves from there to what Sri Aurobindo and the mother have said about meditation, they in fact widen the canvas still further. Instead of prescribing a rigid technique of meditation, a lot has been left to the individual to work out his own way of achieving some sort of a control over the mind. Because as Patanjali said, essentially it is yogascha chitta vritti nirodha. That is, you try to stabilize the mind, overcome the normal tendency of the mind to run here and there. That is normal for the mind. Mind by its very nature is turbulent. And we are in fact trying to achieve that way a relatively unnatural state of the mind. And you can use your own way. If you are deeply interested in something, you will be able to concentrate on that. But then they widen the canvas further, that if you find meditation, a formal meditation, very difficult or not to your liking, you need not go in for any formal meditation. Work itself can be your meditation. So it's basically a state of total absorption. If you're totally absorbed in your work, that also is a meditative state. So in that sense, one can stay in a meditative poise throughout the day. But then to be able to stay in a meditative poise throughout the day, a little formal meditation, reserving 1 or 2 sessions in a day, the way you have done for meditation, can be very helpful, because then these 1 or 2 sessions can have a spillover effect over the rest of the day, so that one can be in a meditative poise throughout the day. So these are some of the things that I thought I'll bring out. And thank you again for this extremely illuminating talk, and a talk which is very relevant in today's world. We are always looking for evidence in support of these methods, which have stood the test of time, as well as have received a favorable verdict from the world. All attempts to keep them away or to banish them have failed. They have a way of returning again and again, because we find that they provide some of the best answers to the problems of human existence. Thank you again, and we hope to have you again. And the pleasure of listening to you has been doubled by seeing Midori, who did this course on yoga with me about 10 years ago. But then we have been, whenever she has made a trip to India, we have been meeting. And it has been a joy to see her growing and developing into a confident teacher, teaching both the physical practices, meditative techniques, and the philosophy of yoga. And I'm happy that you could establish that connection and have her speak to your students in the university.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have some more inputs, I guess, or queries. Prashant has raised the hand. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, Ashok, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
That was an excellent presentation. Thank you. Very interesting research. And well done to you, Midori, and the team for bringing what I think is a very Asian concept into context. My question was, what is the common ground you see in all the countries you visited when it comes to meditation? Because obviously there are different techniques, and how does it apply to them in those countries and in terms of management, in the management context of an individual and the company?
Okay,
First,
so
what is the commonality? Because it's such a diverse.
So I visited only in this context, in the meditation context, and this research started only very recently, less than 6 months ago, exactly 6 months ago. in terms of the formal investigation. And I visited Japan, met with people from Japan, Singapore, and India. The common theme across the three countries and probably across the world, therefore, I could find is that there are people in Japan who struggle with their workplaces. There are people in Singapore that struggle in their workplaces, and there are people in India that are struggling in their workplaces. And the common merit that came out and that was analyzed to the research is that in all cases that where I met with meditators, they all talked about the improvements in their work life. And my research focuses on business and management. I did not interview company managers. I have not visited companies like Fuji Xerox or Hyflux in Singapore or Airtel in India and talked to HR managers whether it works or not. I have not done that. I have talked to individual meditators and asked them this question regarding their work lives. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. No more questions as such. Thank you so much again, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time and knowledge with all of us. I thank the participants as well for being with us today. We can close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.